So I met this guy at our homeowner association meeting, and he was new to the neighborhood. And I asked him where he was from, and he said the Bronx. I said, wow, the Bronx is the suburbs of Houston. That's a big move. What do you miss? And he said neighbors. Neighbors. He said, yeah, in the Bronx, my wife and I had no trouble meeting our neighbors because we're all kind of on top of one another. But here we moved to Houston, and everyone seems to drive into their garages and go into their houses, and then in their backyards, and then drive away again. And so we've come to this HOA meeting to meet our neighbors. And I thought, gosh, that's kind of sad. You know, you have to go to an HOA meeting to meet neighbors. But we experienced it too. My wife Sherry and I, we moved to Houston, and we didn't meet our neighbors till there was a hurricane that knocked out the electricity for a couple of weeks, and we're all forced outside, and we had to meet one another. And so I wanted to connect this guy to a community of meaning. But what community? The church, of course, right? And our church building is about 3 miles away. But if he came to our church, he'd have to buy into organized religion and the way we do organized religion and Jesus and Christians and God, and that's a lot, and I just met the guy. I could have invited him to our small group. We're welcoming enough. And there, though, he would have had to buy into Bible study and faith and life talk. And, you know, our small group is welcoming, but we've traveled a lot of miles together as a small group, and it's tough to break into those relationships. I don't care how welcoming you are. And I could have invited him to our house for dinner, just them and me and Sherry and Abby and our dog. But we just met, and that felt a little creepy and weird. I wanted to invite him to a community of meaning, but I didn't have one. I felt like that was appropriate for me to invite him. We know the boats from Scandinavia and Germany stopped coming a long time ago. We know that. We know droves of Lutherans are not moving here from the upper Midwest anymore. We know. We know no one's signing up for Christianity as part of what it means to be a good citizen. We know that. We know we can't put a Lutheran ad in the paper and expect people just to come. We're rostered ministers, after all. We know this. We're wicked smart, right? I'm just describing the water we're all drowning in, right? And it's a good thing we can't pat ourselves on the back for that kind of cheap growth, and we can ask more interesting questions. We put an awful lot of time and energy into what we do on Sunday morning. And I know that's for really good theological reasons, I'm sure, but I think in our hearts, we think on some level, if we just get it right, if we just get the product right, people will somehow find us and they'll come, right? If we just get that rightly worded welcoming statement on our buildings and our websites, people will somehow find us and they'll come. Some do, and when they do, we welcome them. The people who they feel far from God and far from the faith community, their numbers are only growing, and I would argue that we're not very good at being in relationship with people who don't already buy in to our version of Christianity on some level. But what if we put as much time and intentionality into the church scattered as we do the church gathered? What if we recognized, again, that the church has not one building, but as many buildings as our members have apartments and condos and houses? Here's what that might look like. It might look like we invest in leaders and we send them out to form these mission-minded communities that are gathered around a common interest or a common cause. And these leaders had been trained to listen to the movements of the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit opens up opportunities for conversation and invitation. And while the core of these mission-minded communities is made up of these leaders from the congregation, the rest of the members of these mission-minded communities are people who feel far from God and far from a faith community. They don't know what they think about Jesus yet, or organized religion, or the way we do organized religion, but they are sure about the relationships they found there, or the common cause, or the good that group is doing in the neighborhood. I think I can invite my neighbor from the Bronx to a place like that. I could say, hey, you know, on Sunday evening, a group of us from the neighborhood, we're getting together, we're going to have dinner, we're going to hang out, and we're going to plan our next trip to the park to do a cleanup, or we're going to make some crafty cards for children with cancer, or we're going to play geeky board games or whatever. Why don't you come join us? If nothing else, we'll meet some of your neighbors. See, then he wouldn't have to buy into to God or Christianity. He wouldn't have to break into those tough relationships in small groups. He wouldn't have to have an awkward dinner with my family. He could come to this group and find a place where he belonged, even before he believed. Now, I might not be describing this guy from the Bronx at all. He might have been a fellow pastor, for all I know. We didn't get to what we did for a living, but I bet I'm describing someone in my life, someone maybe that I build trails with from among the mountain bikers, or maybe someone I get up at dark early in the morning with to go running, or someone that teaches school with Sherry, or someone that goes to school with Abby. I bet there's somebody out there who feels lost, or is experiencing brokenness, or just wants to be a part of a community of meaning, just wants to be a part of the common good, and just needs a place to belong on their way to belief. And these people could be invited into these communities and become a regular part of the life of these communities, fully a part of it, and they could discover that Christians aren't just a bunch of anti-intellectual, judgmental jerks, at least not more so than everyone else. And they could be invited into, at the right time, more intentional discipleship. And then maybe, just maybe, they would see themselves as leaders who wanted to start mission-minded communities of their own around a different common cause or a different common interest. And we would bless them, and we would equip them, and we would send them to create new places where people could belong on their way to belief. Now, I recognize our congregation doesn't have places like this yet, but we believe we are on a journey to creating these places. And if you'd like to learn more about our journey and where we think we're headed, I've got a document prepared in our conference toolbox. Thank you.